You have found Authentic Business Adventures, the business program that brings you the struggles, stories, and triumphant successes of business owners across the land. We are coming to you from the Sun Prairie Community Radio Studios, underwritten by Bank of Sun Prairie. My name is James Kateman, business coach at Draw In Customers Business Coaching and author of the Bold Business Book, available on Amazon for you readers out there. Today we are welcoming / preparing to learn from Gerry Pfeiffer of Hydra Pro Drying Systems. Gerry, my good man, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing today, James?
I am doing very well. You know, right before the show started, we were just talking about all the rain and stuff like that. Generally speaking, that's probably got to be good news, right?
Well, on the business side, it's good news. It's always a bad because you feel bad for the people that it's happening to.
Sure.
Always.
Sure.
You know, you don't want this stuff happening to anybody. That's why a lot of times when I go out and I'm talking to people about their water damage.
Right.
Let's solve the problem of what caused this so it never happens again.
Sure. In the end, companies like yours have to exist, though, because water will always find a way to get in places that it shouldn't, right? Path of least resistance, right?
Right. It is very an interesting industry, to say the least, because you don't want your customers to have any problems, but on the same hand, that's what keeps you busy.
And if companies like yours didn't exist, these customers would just end up with a mess, a mop, and a bigger mess later.
Well, I always use this example. So you ever drive down the country road and you come across that farmhouse and it doesn't look like anybody's occupied that farmhouse for the longest time?
Sure.
It's because when that farmhouse got wet, my industry didn't exist back then.
They just walked away.
They just had to walk away. It became unlivable.
Awesome. So Hydra Pro Drying Systems, why don't you tell the listeners, what is Hydra Pro Drying Systems?
Well, kind of what the name says is we dry things, but it entails a lot more than that.
You got some fancy tools, equipment here?
Yes. I mean, for the most part, the number one thing is to get your house dry. A lot of people realize that if my house is going to continue to exist, i.e. not have any mold, which a lot of people look at mold as being the health issue, but besides it being a health issue, it's your mold is actually breaking down your house.
Sure.
You know, I always use this example. When the tree falls in the woods, you know, that tree is starting to decompose and turn itself back into dirt.
Sure.
Well, when your house gets wet and the organic material in your house gets wet,
right,
that mold is doing the same thing. It's breaking that.
Turning your house back into dirt.
It's turning it back into dirt, which you don't want to have happen.
Sure.
Hence why an industry like mine exists.
Right, so you're saying essentially houses are getting wet because rainwater's coming in or sewer lines are backing up, things of that nature?
The basics for your house to work is to shelter you from the storms. Okay. Right, so that's one of the ways that the water can come in is through rain.
Sure.
The other way is we have this thing called plumbing.
Yep.
Because we like, indoor water.
Love it.
When the plumbing fails, that's the other way that water can come in. But I could tell you about all the different things that I've seen fail, and I probably wouldn't name them all because I probably haven't come across them all. Sure. It seems like every day there's a new thing that happens that, I've never seen that happen before. That's amazing that the water came in that way.
Sure. Interesting. All right.
Yeah. So, for what we do, it's drying those things out. Sometimes it's cleaning them up, like what happened this last weekend, Friday to Saturday, we had heavy rain. You think about the rain coming in through a crack in the foundation or those type of things. In this particular situation, what happened is the city sewer draining system became overly full of water. Okay. And if the backflow valve that keeps that water out of your house fails, there's no place for that sewage to go but into your basement.
Gotcha. Okay.
Unfortunately for a bunch of people on a certain street, there's about 8, probably 10 houses in a row that all got flooded with the sewage.
Sure, because they were on that same valve.
So, sewage, yes, the water came with it, but it's also cleaning up that sewage because that comes with another problem, which is bacterial growth.
Sure.
Which can cause all kinds of health issues out there if you just let it sit.
Sure.
And then here's the thing, the longer you let that stuff sit, the worse it's going to get.
All right.
So hopefully the people that were hit by the rain, they've made it down to their basement already and taken a look around. They're going, hey, did any of this stuff happen to me?
Sure, solve the problem.
And I do that thing every storm that I have.
Right.
I'll go down in my basement. Let's just go take a look around.
Sure.
Because I'll say it on every storm that happens. I'll say this to my people. We'll get calls a month from now, and it'll be from this rain that happened because they haven't noticed it yet.
You have noticed that they're on vacation or something like that? Or
it's a little bit that has come in the corner of the room. It's a spot where you don't walk, so you don't feel the wet on your feet.
Sure.
Sometimes what alerts you to the fact is you got this funky smell that's starting to happen.
Sure.
Oh, where's this funky smell happening?
Sure.
You start investigating, and that's when you realize, hey, it's wet over here.
Uh-huh.
The funky smell that you get, that's actually the bacteria is starting to grow in your house.
Interesting. Okay.
It's a good indication that...
Just freaking everybody out here.
Yeah, I don't mean to do that.
No, but I imagine that's common, right? It's water.
It's
Anytime you leave water sit out,
right.
things are going to happen.
It's very common. A lot of times I'll get called from people that will say, I have this smell happening. I don't know where it's coming from, and whatnot. And immediately when I walk into their house, I'll say, oh, this is wet carpet. Now we just got to find where the wet carpet is because it's got a very distinct, smell to it.
Right.
So that's when you start getting out there's a certain tool that we can check carpet with to see if it's wet or not. And you just start poking around until you find where it's wet at.
Sure.
And then here's the thing about water. If you're dealing with fresh water, those are the ones that are easy if you get on them right away. Because if you can dry those, and you won't have any residual effects or problems with mold or bacteria growing because it's fresh water.
Sure.
It's when the water is gray water, sometimes they'll call it.
Okay.
Or it's sewage water, when it has things in the water that can really accelerate an issue.
It's already been in the process of decomposing. Now you're just spreading it all over your house.
All right. Sometimes when it's wet, maybe a couple of days before you notice it.
Sure.
You're still okay. But obviously the number one defense against any of that bacterial growth or anything is to get it dried quickly if it is fresh water.
Sure.
Now, if it's the sewage water, like what happened over the weekend, that is, get the sanitizers out and we start sanitizing.
Sure.
Throwing out stuff that you cannot clean.
Okay.
The porous material.
Okay.
A good example of that would be carpet.
Oh, gotcha.
You don't want to try to clean the carpet. Just throw it and replace it with new stuff.
All right.
So, there's a big thing to this besides just talking about drying things from water.
Sure.
It's what are the residual effects from if I left it.
Gotcha. Okay.
What's in the water. In my industry, we talk about the 3 different categories of water. A lot of people don't know, well, what do you mean 3 different categories of water? Well, it's pretty simple. Category 1 water is fresh water. We know it came from a fresh water source.
Sure.
This is probably water that you could put into a glass and drink it.
Okay.
Now, you might get sick from the chlorine or whatever else that they treated it from, but it's fresh water. Category 2 water is referred to a lot of times as gray water. Okay. It's water that could have contaminants in it. A good example of this would be from the rainwater came into your house.
Gotcha. Okay.
I always use this with rainwater. You could go outside and catch rainwater and drink that rainwater, and you may not get sick from it. Okay. On the same hand, you may catch that same water, and if you drink it, you could get sick from it. Sure. That's category 2 water. Okay. All right.
We're not sure water.
We're not sure water, but let's just treat it as if it has bacteria in it. Okay. Let's play it safe, right? That's category 2 water. The category 3 water is the water it came up from the sewer. Okay. It's got funky stuff in it.
Definitely not drinkable.
You definitely know it's got something in there. Let's take all precautions for ourselves to protect ourselves in dealing with this stuff. Okay. Let's get it out of this house. Let's throw away the things that are porous that are going to be hard to clean. Okay. And we're just dealing with this right now. So it's, I've been telling my guys, if it's metal, we can clean it. If it's plastic, we can wipe it off and clean it. If it's cloth, well, you could clean it, but you don't know if you got it all out.
No, if I got a blanket that got in some poop water, that blanket's gone.
Yeah, let's just throw that stuff out.
Yeah.
See, so it just gets to be a lot of work sometimes.
Sure.
We're dealing with the ones that happen over the weekend because the water covered the entire basement area.
So now you raise an interesting point, right? Because I imagine insurance comes into play with a lot of this.
Correct.
Or most of it. And you got these problems that are happening at night. Friday night, water comes in, which means call comes into you. You fire out there, clean up what you can to get the situation under control. But at what point, do you have to start taking pictures or video or something to prove that there was an issue? Or how does that work?
The insurance process is really interesting. Some of my competitors actually get called out by the insurance company, so they know that insurance is covering it and how to deal with this. A lot of questions come up from the homeowners as to, hey, how much is this? Is it going to cost me?
So they get 8 inches of poop water in their basement, and all of a sudden they're getting all like, wait, how much is this going to cost me?
Because they've heard the horror stories about, hey, the insurance didn't cover the whole thing.
Oh,
You
they're
know,
just going to live with it in their basement, or what's the other option?
Well, I caution people about listening to the other homeowners about their insurance claim.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, because every one of them is different.
Sure.
They're all going to be different. So don't listen to those horror stories. Deal with your insurance company, directly and get answers from them. And don't go in there with this pre-notion that, oh my gosh,
Sure.
it's going to be hard to do.
So is the
So-
point that they're trying to price shop, or that they're, I guess, what is the reason for asking a question like that? If I got 8 inches of scummy water in my basement, and you're here saying, hey, should I solve this problem for you?
Well,
yeah, solve the problem.
Right. A lot of times they want to make sure that, hey, we got to wait for the insurance adjuster to get here so he can see it as it is sitting here. And then I'm telling them sometimes the insurance adjuster is not going to be here for 3 or 4 days.
I was going to say, if you
they're
got a
probably not
storm-
going to come out on a Saturday.
Sure, if you got a storm where a bunch of houses hit, there's only so many adjusters.
Right. I've talked to one adjuster already this morning from the storms that happened on Friday to Saturday. And he says he's had 6 of them to go look at just from that day.
Wow, okay.
There's no way that he'd be able to go look at 6 of those in one day.
Okay, really?
He probably would be able to look at maybe 2.
Okay.
Because when the adjuster comes out, he's going to start estimating, what are the repairs going to
Gotcha.
be to this.
Okay.
And to do those estimates, sometimes people don't get this. When you talk about estimating, sometimes it could take a couple of hours to put together something like that.
Wow, okay.
It could take, on the one that I'm at right now, if there was carpet and drywall in this, it probably would take them all day to put that estimate together.
Really?
Oh, yeah, because of all the different line items that go into it.
Holy cow, I feel like there should be some per square foot estimating software or something.
Well, there is a software program,
Okay.
but there's just a lot of details to it.
All right.
A lot of details.
Because I have a hard time believing that the builder took a day to make the estimate to finish the basement, right?
All right, that's the whole thing. When the house was first built, I'm sure he didn't go through that, and it just took him one day to come
Sure.
up with some plans.
Right.
It probably took him a month, maybe even 2.
Oh,
To
really?
come up with plans and come up with the material list. What's
figured that
going
would
into
be
this
minutes.
house. Well, that's the whole thing. When companies advertise free
Sure.
estimates, for you as the consumer, one thing you really gotta look at is, what is this free estimate going to include?
Sure.
Is it going to include somebody sitting down at a computer all day
Okay.
to actually estimate a detail out?
All right.
Or is it going to be, hey, we've run across some stuff like this before. This is about where, you have a good idea.
Just
if you've been in-
ballparking ads
yeah,
between
if you've
X
been in
and
the
Y, right?
if you've been in the industry long enough, It's just about what this is going to cost. It's the same with if you were looking at cars.
Sure.
If you were talking Cadillac, I got a roundabout kind of in my head of what a Cadillac's
Right,
going to
right,
cost
right.
versus a Chevy.
Sure.
But the same thing when it comes to water damage. How much of the kitchen is wet?
All right.
How much of the house is wet?
Sure.
Here's what I've done before, and here's about where they've come up. So this is another problem with the industry is sometimes that consumer, that homeowner, wants the detailed, how much is this going to cost before we get started? And sometimes you got to tell them, we just don't have time to do that. We got to get
Sure.
the drying process going before you start having those problems.
Right.
Let's get the the sewage back up.
Today
cleaned
the
up
price
out of
is
your,
this, but tomorrow after your mold starts growing, the
It'll-
price is going to be
See,
bigger, right?
Well, it'll never do that. The thing about doing insurance claims is that's what that insurance adjuster is doing. He's kind of looking at, how much is the homeowner going to pay for this, because now it's the insurance company obviously paying for it. But he has the same pricing software that I have.
Sure.
And it has the same lineal feet price
Okay.
in his software as I have, because it's the same company's software.
So there's standards in the industry.
Right. So
Okay.
it's just a matter of evaluating where the water has gone,
Okay.
to make sure that all the steps have happened in there.
Okay.
And that way, your homeowner, you're not going to get caught with something that, hey, this was missed or that was missed. Insurance companies are usually pretty good. If you miss something up front, to come back to them and say, hey, we missed this, but I had to take this out because of this reason, because it was wet and there was an issue.
Sure.
with it. The insurance companies aren't going to balk at that.
Okay.
So, that's the thing with the insurance companies. And in Hydra Pro, we'll take the documentation for them.
Okay.
Measurements. They'll typically come later and take their own measurements just to make sure.
The insurance company?
Yes,
Okay.
the insurance company will come and take their own measurements. But by that time, we'll have that, like what I'm telling you about with the sewage backup, that adjuster's going to appreciate that basement being cleaned up before he gets there.
Sure.
He doesn't want to see it with all the sewage in
No,
there.
don't show up with your rubber boots.
I mean, think about it. Would you want to go see this if you were the
No.
adjuster?
No.
You'd rather be there going, hey, they got it all cleaned up for me. It doesn't smell anymore. Hey, now I can walk around freely
Right.
and do an estimate the way it's supposed to happen.
Sure.
And this is the thing with what we do at Hydra Pro. We do a lot of upfront work. I don't ask for anything down payment.
Okay.
And we do a lot of the work up front. And
Has that been an issue in regards to collections or anything like that? Like, thanks for
at times,
working
but not
all
too,
the...
At times, but not too often.
Okay.
People are pretty honest about that. Plus, you
Okay.
ask the insurance company for a direct payment.
Gotcha.
You know, then you work that stuff out. So here's the thing with where I come from in this business is I try not to look at the money part of it. You know, am I going to get paid? Let's take care of the issue that you're having with your house.
If I'm shoveling 8
you know?
inches of poop water, my first thought is, am I getting paid? Because this is clearly not a hobby.
Right. I'm your good friend and neighbor. I'm going to come out and give you a hand because you need a hand with this stuff. And
Sure.
then, you know, hopefully I get paid at the end, but that's not my first thing that I'm thinking about when I'm there. I'm thinking,
Interesting.
okay, this is the, you know, it's kind of like when the fire department shows up at your house and it's burning. I don't think they sit there and ask you to sign a contract and let's get payment down before we start putting some water on your house.
Sure.
You know, same thing with Hydra Pro when we show up for something that's readily needs to be addressed now. Hey, I'll have you sign some paperwork, but let's start addressing the problem
Okay,
here,
so
this doesn't get, because the only person who's going to get worse for is the person cleaning it up.
Sure.
You know, and
That's fair. Okay. So they called you, so there's an assumption of trust from you to them, or
Right.
from them to you already.
Yeah.
That's already been established because they contacted
Yeah,
you.
well, yeah, not all restoration companies are that way, but
Sure.
I just feel that that's doing the right thing
Okay.
for people. It's doing the right thing for my community
Sure.
that I live in. You know, it would be very hard to walk away from somebody that needs my help just because they didn't have a dime to pay for it.
Sure. Okay.
You know,
That's
and
fair.
there's been plenty of times where, hey, I've reduced the price. Just, hey, cover the cost of my guys. Obviously, I can't do that every time. Otherwise, I would be out of business.
Like, what are you doing?
But that's what makes, you know, Hydro Pro drying systems different than everybody else.
Sure.
I'll even come out. If you think you have the slightest moisture problem with your house, I'll come out and do a free inspection of your house.
Okay.
And then we'll go from there.
Oh,
if you have an
interesting.
issue
Okay.
that works out that, hey, you know, it's something that my carpenters can do to fix this problem. Here's what the price is going to be,
Sure.
and we'll fix it, and then you won't have this problem again. A lot of times, and this happens every week, a lot of times I'm just giving free advice to a bunch of people.
All right.
Which I'm happy to do that because that gets my name out there in the community.
Sure.
And for me, this is me giving this back to the community because I got 30 years in the building industry. I have another 8 years in doing water damage restoration. The things that I've fixed in people's houses are looked at. You know, I can see what the issue is. Maybe it's not
Sure.
something I can fix, but I know the person that can.
Okay. Fair.
So that's why it's for me giving back to the community. Hey, if you think you got a moisture problem or you got this funky smell coming,
Sure.
if you call me up, the inspection is no charge.
So that's awesome. So let's talk about what you use in regards to tools to figure out there is moisture. Because outside of saying, oh, it feels like there's moisture in here, or just smelling, kind of musty in here, there's some fancier tools that you have. I imagine higher priced tools that you have.
Perfect lead in. I'm glad you asked this question. So when things get wet, and I think I've even showed you this before, when a piece of drywall gets wet, to the naked eye, it may not look wet.
Okay.
So how do you determine what's wet and what's dangerous so that something like mold could grow on?
Sure.
There's several different instruments I use. The first one would be a thermal imaging camera.
Okay.
This is a camera that sees temperature differences.
Okay. So just like the Predator.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. So you see temperature differences with this. They use these in home energy audits
Okay.
to see
sure.
if your home is losing any, you know, in the summertime it'd be losing any air conditioning, in the wintertime
Sure.
it'd be losing heat.
So you see the windows look a different color than the
So
door
how,
seam and
how
the
I
siding.
so how I use a thermal imaging camera is that if something got wet, that water's evaporating off that surface. When it's evaporating off that surface, it's losing energy. If it's losing energy, it will be cooler.
Sure.
For that same scientific reason is why you put a wet washcloth on your head when you have a headache.
Sure.
That water's evaporating off that washcloth. That's what makes
Cools
it
it
feel
down.
cool.
Sure. Sure.
So I'll be able to see those temperature differences with the thermal imaging camera. It's very it's very particular about the temperature differences, so
Okay.
it'll see them, especially when it's water. You'll see it right away. However, it'll only tell you there's a temperature difference. It won't actually tell you it's wet.
Sure.
So sometimes
Okay.
you can get fooled by things like in the summertime you'll see a cool spot in the wall, but that's just the air conditioning flowing through the
Sure.
through the vents of
There's
the wall.
ductwork and all that.
Right.
Okay.
You'll see those with the thermal imaging camera.
Sure.
So there's a second tool. It's called a moisture meter.
Okay.
It's a simple electronic. You know, water conducts electricity. So if you put it up to that wall and the meter
Sure.
gives you a higher reading, that's the indicator that it's wet.
Is it piercing the sheetrock?
There's two different versions.
Okay.
The first version that I'll use is a surface meter.
Okay.
So you don't have any pin marks, so to say, in any drywall before I start putting some holes into something.
Sure.
However, it's not as accurate as the pins would be.
Gotcha.
You always want to use the pins, especially when it's getting closer to being what you think is dry.
All right.
And that way you make sure you got it all. You
Okay.
didn't leave a corner that's wet.
Sure.
Let's say you dried, 95% of the place and your meter's telling you, hey, it's all dry, all dry, all dry. But then you pull those pins out and you start poking things around. It'll be a little bit more precise about finding the water.
Gotcha. Okay.
So typically to dry your place out takes 3 to 5 days.
Okay.
So once you get into it for a couple of days, then I start pulling out the pins.
All right.
Unless I can poke the pins into something that is not going to be seen.
Okay.
For instance, the rafters in your basement,
Sure.
underneath the kitchen where it got wet. Okay, I can start poking into that stuff. Even if I poke a couple of holes into this, you're never going to notice.
Sure.
For crying out loud, you got nails sticking out of there from
Right.
where the carpenter originally missed the beam.
Right. Right.
So you're not going to worry about those. But if it's into drywall,
Sure.
into your hardwood floor,
Gotcha.
those
Okay.
type of things, you don't want to be putting any holes into those things because
Right.
what happens if I don't find any moisture with those pins?
You've
Now I
just
still got a couple of holes.
aerated your hardwood floor.
Right, now I got a couple of pinholes I gotta fix. But you want to use the pins because it's more accurate.
Okay.
And the other thing is that ensures me that when I'm done drying, I can confidently say your place is dry. You're not going to have any future
Sure.
issues from this moisture problem.
Okay. That makes
Okay.
sense.
So those there's another tool that we use for the carpet itself, which is probably the number one tool to come out when there is carpet, because that'll tell you exactly where the perimeter of the room that's wet.
Sure.
So you start poking that around in the carpet, and it's beeping at you. It's
Yeah.
telling you, hey, you got some moisture in the carpet over here.
Gotcha. Okay.
And you can pretty much find the perimeter as how far the water has actually gone to.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Which is, that's the first important thing, is how far did the water go?
Sure.
So I make sure that when after 3 days of drying, I go back to those spots again to make sure that they're dry.
Sure. That makes sense. All right. So how do you dry out a place?
So how we dry out is there's basically 3 steps to drying.
Stand there with a hairdryer?
Exactly. Well,
kidding.
that is drying. You could. It'd take you a
Sure.
long time.
Right. Right.
It'd be very interesting. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if the insurance company would pay for it that way.
It was cheaper, probably.
You'd probably have a lot of man hours in there.
Sure.
And you'd probably have to throw in a few lunches and dinners.
Right.
No, so when it comes to drying, it's basically 3 steps. 1, extract any water that you could possibly extract.
Okay, so you're talking about standing water or vacuuming
Yeah.
up whatever you can?
Yeah, a lot of times before I get there, the homeowner has already done this. Because when you get water, let's say the kitchen sink sprung a leak.
Okay.
Probably the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to your linen closet and you're going to pull out every towel that you have.
Sure.
And you're going to start
Soaking
up all the
right,
water.
sure.
That's the extraction part. So a lot of times by the time I get there, the homeowner's already done that part.
Okay.
And the water that's left is soaked into the
Sure.
building.
Okay.
So number 1, extraction. Mm-hmm. Number 2 thing that you want to start is evaporation.
Okay.
So this is getting the material to give up the moisture that it's taken on.
Gotcha.
So you want evaporation. So you get evaporation, and now you have all this moisture that's in the air. Mm-hmm. So the air can only take on so much moisture.
Sure.
All right. Otherwise, it becomes saturated. It slows down the rate of evaporation. Mm-hmm. So then what we want to do is have dehumidification.
Okay.
So you get the right size dehumidifiers for the space that you have. So you're turning
Sure.
enough. You're turning the air, enough times per day. Mm-hmm. So you're drawing that extra moisture out of the air and putting it down the drain.
And these are probably fancier than your run-of-the-mill big box store $100 dehumidifier, right?
Well, it's great that you asked this question, because I'm gonna give a company here in town a big kudos, because I love this company. They are awesome. So in Madison, down off of East Washington, I think it's Thayer Road, there's a company called Thermostor.
Oh, sure.
So Thermostor produces Phoenix dehumidifiers,
Okay.
and that's where I get my dehumidifiers from. They are larger than the ones you're going to get at Home Depot. Mm-hmm. Although the typical home will not need one of these dehumidifiers. I always get this question: how big of a dehumidifier do I need in my basement?
Sure.
Well, the question would be how many cubic feet of space do you have in your basement?
Gotcha.
And then you want to get the appropriate dehumidifier to cover that cubic feet of space.
Sure.
So that thing is turning the air enough times. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I'll tell them about this. Oh, it's right here in town. They want to go down there and buy one of these dehumidifiers.
Okay.
If you had one of these dehumidifiers in your basement just to keep the extra humidity out during the summertime,
Yeah.
you would turn that thing on for, I don't know, maybe a day, and then you'd go turn it off for a while. For
Okay.
a few days. And then you'd go turn it back on
Oh,
again.
wow.
Because
Okay.
it's that powerful.
Gotcha. Okay.
Your basement would be super dry.
Okay, it's like Arizona down here. All
yeah,
right.
the dehumidifier you'd just be using electricity more than anything.
Sure. Okay.
But yeah, the dehumidifiers are bigger. People often ask me, well, how big are they? What's the size? How much space is it going to take up in my kitchen that's just got wet? I always tell them this. It looks like a, one of those dorm-sized refrigerators.
Okay.
For the college students have.
Sure.
They're probably a little bigger than that, but about that size. So
Okay.
you can figure that thing being in your way in the kitchen.
Sure.
We always try to set that stuff in an area where you can still walk around it
Okay.
and move around the equipment, but hopefully you don't have to move around the equipment too much because I always worry about people tripping over it.
Sure.
I'd hate to see somebody get hurt,
Right. Right.
But yeah, we try to tuck it away a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah, the dehumidifiers are bigger, and then like I said, there's different sizes of dehumidifiers from different companies. The ones that Thermostor put out, the Phoenix dehumidifiers come in different sizes, and basically it's how much airflow are you going to get through to take out how much moisture you're going to take out of the air.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
So, so you can get different size ones.
Sure.
The ones that we use are called R175s or the R200s that put out by Thermostor, and they're called Phoenix.
Okay.
And it's great to have them right here in town because when a dehumidifier breaks, they're right there. They can fix
Go
it.
right there. Nice.
Yeah, versus sending it away to a
Sure.
different town.
What other type of equipment do you have to deal with?
So there's also blowers. The big thing that starts evaporation is air movement.
Okay.
How evaporation works with the air movement is that air is actually scraping off the outermost layer of moisture. Let's say the drywall got wet. Well, you can't dry the water that's in the middle of the drywall.
Sure.
You can only dry the surface of the drywall.
Okay.
So you have to get the water that's in the middle of that drywall to the surface.
Gotcha.
And how you do that is you scrape off the layer of moisture that's on the surface.
And just keep moving it.
You're right. So how you do that is with airflow. So
Okay.
when that airflow is blowing off of there, actually what it's doing is it's scraping off the layer of moisture that's on the surface.
Gotcha.
That the moisture that's in the middle of that drywall can come to the surface, and then it can get into the air.
All right. That makes sense.
So you have air movers, blowers, fans, some people call them. There's different sizes of those.
Okay.
I try to use the ones that are not so big and bulky to carry around.
Sure.
And then that way they're hopefully not too in the way if you're still going to live in your
Sure.
kitchen while
Sure.
it's being tried. But yeah, they're air movers. There's a bunch of different ones.
All right.
Because here's the first thing that people always do when to do it themselves is they'll do one of two things. Sometimes they do both, but they don't understand the rate of evaporation, and they don't understand dehumidification.
Okay.
So they'll start and they'll put the dehumidifier, as close to that water as it possibly can be,
Sure.
which is probably a good thing to do.
Sure.
But your home dehumidifier, as long as it's in the room, the bigger thing that you should do is close off your house. If you're going to do this yourself and you're going to use your own home dehumidifier, the thing would be to just get it in the room, but then take plastic or something to close off that room. So
All
it's
right.
only dehumidifying that area.
Sure. So it's not trying to do the entire house.
Right.
Much
exactly.
like you leaving the front door open when you got your furnace on or something like that.
Right, exactly.
Sure.
Well, that's the same concept when we use outside air to dry things out. We won't put a dehumidifier because the outside air is dry enough
Gotcha.
to take on the extra moisture
Sure.
that's coming out of the building.
Sure.
So you'll use outside air. Now, a lot of times, it's not really feasible because nighttime happens and the temperature drops, and then you never know if the storm's going to come up. So sometimes using outside air in Wisconsin is not always feasible.
Sure. Because it's so
Like-
volatile.
As if it were in Arizona, they probably use outside air all the time.
Gotcha,
Because
okay.
they don't have
So
the
dry.
possibility of storms coming.
Sure.
It'll still dry the same as long as you got the evaporation going.
Okay.
With the blowers going. But you got to remember, the air can only take on so much moisture, and the other thing is that the air can only give up so much moisture.
Sure.
Now you can get different dehumidifiers to force it to give up more moisture, but now you're talking more extreme
Sure.
levels of dehumidification happening.
All right.
So I mean, there's more to do it than just put your home dehumidifier in there. Like I said,
Sure.
close off the area.
Okay.
The other thing is to make sure you have enough air movement.
All right.
Because the biggest thing you're trying to do is get the moisture to evaporate out of the drywall out of the material. That's the number one thing.
So now you're talking about, okay, so we got rid of the water we can easily see with your towels and all that jazz.
Yep, got rid of
that. They started evaporating.
Got rid of that.
All right, I feel like there's a third step here we forgot.
Dehumidification that we're talking about.
Dehumidification, okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. All right.
You know, once you get it dehumidified and it's dried, then it's just the final steps of cleaning.
Okay.
You know, let's say your carpet got wet. Now we're going to clean it.
So
when you say final step, once that stuff is set up, though, you're metering it because it's not going to dry instantly.
Okay, sure.
You know, a lot of the times when we're drying stuff, it'll take 3 days.
Okay.
You know, sometimes 5 days.
Sure.
Sometimes,
I could see that if you have a lot of water or it's soaked up into a lot of stuff.
Sometimes when you're drying things, you want to take things apart so
Okay.
you can get at them. The more layers you have of stuff, let's say you have a ceramic tile that's, you know, the person that put that in didn't want to take up the linoleum that's glued down, so he just put it over the top.
Sure.
So then you have a subfloor underneath that linoleum, or underlayment, I mean, and then you have a subfloor, and then you have another subfloor.
Sure.
Now, trying to dry through all those layers, it's kind of hard, but it can be done.
Okay.
And how it happens is a thing called vapor pressure.
Okay.
So what we try to do is sometimes manipulate the vapor pressure. You know, if you stick to those 3 basic steps, you got a big thing. But if you're manipulating vapor pressure, what that is changing the temperature
Okay.
of a certain substance. We're really getting into the science stuff of this. And
Sure.
And just let you know, I'm not this smart. I just repeat what other people tell me.
I'm just a man with a hose.
I got a little bit of equipment to help you out. No, but you can, yeah. If you look at when they put the mortar down, when they put the tile down, well, that mortar's wet. How does it dry once they put the tile down?
Great question.
Yeah, well, it's a thing called vapor pressure.
Okay.
So the vapor pressure is what takes the moisture out of that material.
Okay.
Now, you can do the same thing with that floor I just described to you with the ceramic floor, but it will take longer.
Okay.
All right, and then you'll have to apply some heat to it. That's probably the next thing maybe you're leading at is you can apply heat to things to help it dry.
Okay.
You know, when you put the hair dryer to your hair, it gets hot, doesn't it?
Yes. I'm not much of a hair dryer user. The last time I used one, I was trying to dry out my swimming trunks really quick.
We'll ask the females there. Your head gets hot. That hair dryer gets hot.
Sure.
The reason it gets hot is because warmer air can hold more moisture.
All right.
Plus, that warmer air, what you're doing is you're creating that difference of vapor pressure from the cool to the warm, and that's what gets air to more quickly evaporate.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right.
All right.
To get into trying to explain vapor pressure, we could be here for a long time.
Well, we have limited time, and I want to learn more about why you started this business, because this seems to me, and I mean no offense by this, right? When I say that, I mean there's total offense to this, right? Everybody says, I literally don't mean any offense. This is just strictly a curiosity question. You got into a business where you're dealing with junk water 24/7 with a pretty, looking at the tools, I don't know how much they cost, but I imagine it's a lot. So you got a pretty big capital outlay to start the business. This seems like a terrible business to get into.
Sometimes it's what you fall into.
Okay. that's totally fair. I mean, as what you know, you're clearly intelligent about the process and what needs to be done and all that kind of stuff, so I can appreciate that. I'm like, when I talk to people about starting a business, you learn about different types of businesses and all that jazz. When people mention daycare to me, I'm like, oh my God, that sounds terrible to me. But they love kids and they will always have business because people keep having kids.
Well, getting into this, part of it is you fall into it. It's the hand that was dealt to me through whatever, being in the
just
building
experience
market,
or whatever. Okay.
and being into some different industries. Sometimes the restoration person starts from the carpet cleaner because he happens to have this vehicle that can suck water up.
Sure.
So then you get into drying that stuff. For me, with all the years I have in the building industry, and specifically your home, there's so many different things that I've seen.
Okay.
That can, like I said, maybe it's not something that I, specialize in or fix.
Sure.
But I'll know somebody for it.
Okay.
But the other thing is I'll recognize the problem.
Uh-huh.
I had a job. A lady called me up a few weeks ago, and she was having this problem with the water coming in. And I went out there and checked it out. And, she said she had 6 other people out there. They can't figure out where the water's coming from.
Wow.
And I went out, and I was at her house for probably less than 5 minutes. And I said, well, I see what your problem is. and it was how the roof was kind of attached to the side of the house, and the flashing needed to be a certain better, heavy duty.
Okay.
Because your house is not a submarine hatch.
Sure.
I always say this: if you took the side of your house and you laid it flat and put some water on it, it'd leak water through the wall.
Sure. Okay.
But now that it's sitting, vertical, it's shutting the water down.
Sure.
So
it's built for
the water's not coming
on the
through.
presumption that rain goes down, right?
So the water was coming in kind of through where the roof kind of met funny with the house. And
okay.
I said, well, I know what the problem is. I'm just not the person that can fix it. You need an exterior person, because they're going to have to take off the whole siding down this one side of the wall.
Oh, wow.
And they're going to maybe have to peel back some shingles, and they're going to have to flash up the side.
Sure.
And then before we repair the drywall that's inside your house, we probably should let it rain a few times to see if it's going to leak before we
make sure.
fix it.
Okay, sure.
But there was a lot of things there for me. I started drying her house out, but it was going to be weeks and weeks before we ever did the repair to finish the project.
Just because you need to get a construction person out there. Construction people are booked.
Yeah, I needed to get an exterior person out there, and I know a few of those that can deal with roofs and siding. So get them out there, have them do the flashing, and talk to them more about, this is what I'm seeing.
Sure.
This is where it's coming from, and have them agree, yep, I see what you're talking about.
Okay.
And then, have some flashing that we can do, and they'll come up with their own ideas.
Sure.
To do that. So had to wait for them, and then wait. But here again, I never asked for anything up front with that one, for money-wise.
Sure.
Let's take care of your problem.
Okay.
And then we'll figure it out.
All right.
That's it. I don't want to see anybody live in
Sure.
Right. And that might be another reason why I got into this. It's just that when you buy your house, it doesn't come with an owner's manual.
No, much like a kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Just learn as you go.
Exactly. So where do you get those answers? How do I before I spend a lot of money in my house trying to fix something, how do I know that 100% that what I'm doing is actually going to fix what I think it's going to fix?
Sure.
And I've had people spend money on things before, and it didn't fix the problem.
They were just Band-Aids, or my buddy told me this is what works.
That's exactly it. My buddy told me this.
Sure. Your buddy has no experience or no knowledge in this specific area, but he buys you a beer every once in a while, so he's probably got good advice.
Right. Those are perfect people to listen to.
Seems ideal, right?
And there's a lot of people out there. I mean, going back to the insurance world, everybody's had their insurance story.
Sure.
Well, like I said, every insurance company everything is going to be different. Every claim is different.
Okay.
It's like snowflakes. Every one of them is different. As similar as they are, they're all a little different.
Interesting.
So don't listen to how your friend's insurance claim went.
Sure.
It's not going to happen. Okay, and here's the big thing when we go back to insurance. So I always say this when it comes to insurance. It doesn't happen every time, but some people will do this. They'll try to do one of two things with their insurance company, or dealing with the insurance claim. One, they'll try to get us to do things to put on the insurance claim that didn't have to do with the damage.
Oh, so hey, by the way, tell the insurance company my basement was finished.
Hey, tell my insurance company that my phone got wet too.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, sure.
I want a new phone.
Sure.
Well, I can't fix your phone.
Right.
Okay, so that's how you deal with them. But they'll try that. The other thing that they'll do, and this is a big one because this is talking to your buddy, is that your buddy has told you that, hey, I got this insurance claim, and they sent me the check, and I put this big wad of money in my pocket and put it in my wallet, and I got all this money from my insurance company. So then the next person is going to think that, hey, when I make an insurance claim, not only is the insurance company going to pay for the damage,
sure,
but they're also going to put some money in my pocket,
payday,
and I'm going to profit.
Sure.
And that's not the case.
No.
So I don't like that when that starts happening that way.
Sure.
Obviously it's some things that we tiptoe around because I always feel this way. I'm the person in between you and your insurance company. I'm not going to do something unfair to your insurance company, and vice versa. I'm not going to do something unfair to you either.
Sure.
So I'm going to be that person that's going to meet your insurance company with what you want to have done, and I'm going to regulate that both ways.
Sure.
If the insurance company, if something needs to be done and it should be covered under your insurance policy, I'm going to fight for every bit of that thing to happen.
Sure.
On the same hand, if you're trying to get something covered by your insurance company that has nothing to do with it,
right,
I'm going to be on the insurance company's side saying, hey, we can't do that.
Imagine like an accountant has to navigate taxes with you and the IRS, right? We're not trying to screw anybody over. We'll just do the best that makes everybody happy, right?
Right.
There's something admirable about being honest, so that's all right.
Well, yeah. Well, that's exactly it. And going back to this thing, we talk about success and all this stuff. I think for success to me is when somebody calls me. That's the success. Hey, they picked up the phone. They didn't call anybody else. They called me. Hey, that's a success right there in themselves. They
That's
thought
huge.
of me. Somebody talked about me to get me out to their house or to give them my phone number to call me about the issue that
Sure.
happened.
So that's a wonderful segue here. Segue into marketing. What do you find that works to get your name out there?
Well, marketing is different in this type of industry than
Okay.
what you're going to find out there. And I don't know if this is going to work in other industries.
Okay.
So when you think about water damage happening and, let's just say the plumbing breaks, your first phone call is probably going to be to the plumber,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So the big thing to go market to is be that plumber.
Okay.
Because
For you to market to.
for me to market to would be to that plumber.
Sure.
Correct. And the reason and how I market to that plumber is this. That plumber is going to get a call because it has something to do with water. And the plumber's going to do everything about bringing that water into your house and having that water, exit your house through the drain.
Sure.
But when it gets interrupted in between that stage inside your house, like I said, the plumber will fix it to get it in and he'll fix it to get it out. But if it's already in your house, that's the part he's not going to take care of.
Sure.
So I always you
Not
see
my job.
Well, you see these plumbers. The one I'm thinking of is their ad is one call does it all. I said, well, almost.
Almost at all.
Almost.
Okay.
Except for when the water spills into their house.
Sure.
That's where I fill that little gap in there.
They got a little asterisk by their
with
slogan there.
Calling into the plumber.
Sure.
Right, so that's where I fix that. I mean, you fix the pipe, but it's still wet.
Sure.
So that's where I come in and market. So plumbers are a
Gotcha.
good one.
So you get referrals from plumbers, essentially.
Yeah, I get referrals from plumbers.
Okay.
That's a great source. When the plumbing breaks, it's going to be your first phone call. We had one on Friday. The water heater went out.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's kind of an emergency, right? You would like to have a hot shower, don't you?
Right.
Okay, so that plumber's getting that call.
Friday
and-
was 95 degrees. I might have been cool with a cold shower.
Well,
But I understand what you're saying.
You
Yeah.
still had the air conditioning on, so
Yeah.
maybe then the warm shower.
Sure.
Not ice cold. Because then you wouldn't be able to take a shower. Because then you wouldn't be able to stand in.
Right.
So that plumber gets that call. When the water heater goes out, sometimes the bottoms of them rust out,
Oh, definitely.
and
yeah,
then the water spills out of the water heater. That's how you know you need a new water heater.
It's got a nice little telltale sign of your entire basement being filled with hot water.
This goes back to the owner's manual of your house.
Sure.
How old is my water heater? But anyway, going back to the plumber, he'll get that call. And he'll get there and see, hey, the water spilled. Now I can take care of your water heater.
Sure.
But you really should have somebody address
Gotcha.
the water here. For that plumber that I market to, I tell him this, tell your homeowners, there's no risk in calling me to have me come inspect. It's no charge to them.
Sure.
And I love telling people, here's where the water went to.
Right.
Here's what you should do if you're going to do this yourself to
All
make
right.
sure that you get it taken care of.
Sure.
And I always offer this. If you're going to do it yourself, here's what you need to do. And I'll tell you what, in 2 weeks, if you want me to come back to check to see if it's dry, I'll come back in 2 weeks and check to see if it's dry.
All right.
As long as you're in the area.
Sure.
If you're down in Beloit, that might be
Sure.
there might be a little charge for me to
got a
come
little
by,
trip charge.
cover
Sure.
for my gas. But, for the most part in Madison
Right.
area and stuff, I'm out and about all day long anyway. To come by and
Sure.
spend another 5 minutes with you to make sure that you're not going to have any future problems with your house, that's great. But this goes back to my thing about being successes, is
Okay.
that they thought about me.
Right.
So what's going to happen the next time they have an issue with their house if I went and helped them out with this one?
Well, if you took care of them well, then you're
And
golden.
I didn't charge them anything. I'm hoping that they'll keep my card handy.
Sure.
Hey, even if hey Gerry, do I need a new roof? Can you come out? And I don't know if I'm ready for a roof. Hey, I'll come out. Take a peek at it.
Sure.
Okay, yeah, you're ready.
All right.
Or whatever it might be.
Sure.
Hey, I got this egress window. Is this thing set up right? I don't know. Seems like to me it comes in a little bit over here.
Sure.
What can I do to fix this? Hey, maybe I'll have some ideas for you. But those things, like I said, those things to get information from me, I don't charge for. I always feel that's me giving back to that community
Sure.
that I live in. And the other thing is I want you to be safe, because if it does happen where you do need my services now, I'm still hoping that I'm your first phone call.
Sure. So do you have background in construction?
I have spent probably around, let's just call it 30 years
Okay.
in the construction industry, from mostly from the sales side of it.
Okay.
But on the sales side of it, if you're the person that's out there looking at the problem, you might be the person fixing that problem.
Gotcha. Okay.
Hence, when I was in millwork, if the window's not going up and down right, and I can see what's causing it not to go up and down right, something with the balance, and it's something I can fix. Okay.
Just fix it.
Just fix it. We don't have to call this into a big, huge thing. So I've seen a lot of different things with your home.
Okay.
You know, from millwork to roofing to downspouts and gutters to siding. I can't fix your furnace.
All right.
But I know how it works.
Sure.
I can't fix your water heater, but I know how it works.
Sure.
You know, your water softener. I can't fix it, but I know how it works.
Sure. Makes sense.
Here's the thing. When you talk to people about owning their house, ask them how their water heater works and see if they can explain it to you.
Okay.
Because probably most of them can't understand how it works.
Really?
Yeah. So when you know where you put the salt in the brine tank?
You talking about water softener or water heater?
I'm sorry, a water softener.
Water softener, sure.
Yeah. Do you understand how the water softener works?
I do, but the chemistry of it throws me off.
Okay. Well, you get the just that the water that's sitting in that brine tank is not the water that's going to end up coming out of your shower.
No.
Well, there's a lot of people out there thinking that that's the water that's coming out through your shower.
Sure.
And that's not true.
But you could argue most drivers on the road don't know how to change their own tire or use their own turn signal.
Exactly. So it becomes the same thing when you're driving your car. My car's going down the road.
Right.
But I don't know that it needs an oil change.
Maybe you don't, but I do.
Right. So, some people know, okay, I know my car needs gas.
Sure.
So they just put gas in it.
Because I have a gauge and a light that tells me, and the person in the passenger seat says, are you going to pull over?
Right, but never knowing that, hey, I got to give an oil change.
Sure.
Same with hey, you got this, I had this water come in, and then while I'm doing an inspection, I see that the hole that your sub pump is in is the water's all the way up to the top.
Not ideal.
It hasn't flooded yet, but that's an indication that your sub pump's not working.
One drop more, and it's right there.
That's a thing. It's time to go change your sub pump. So
sure.
Those are the things that I'll notice besides the inspection for the water you're going to get from me.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'll notice other things about your house and going, hey, this is an issue that's going to continue.
Is that
to get
really?
worse.
You've seen that before? A sump pump that was full like that?
Oh yeah, full up to the brim, but it hadn't flooded yet.
Wow. Okay, it's just lucky.
Oh yeah, if it had rained another couple of inches, the basement would have been flooded.
Dang. Huh.
But they were able to get a sub pump over there in time before the next rainfall, and
all right.
Never flooded.
But as soon as they stuck their arm in there, then it started to flood a little bit, right?
Yeah. Good thing it was only cement around it.
Sure. Interesting. That's funny.
Well, I've seen things. Here's another good one: is go and inspect a leak in a kitchen. Mm-hmm. And so you're always wanting to inspect the basement area underneath the kitchen.
Sure.
To see if it's come through. Well, I've gone down in basements before and started looking around and looked fine where the kitchen was at, but then did some more looking in the basement and looked up to find mold growing in the rafters.
Oh.
That they were totally unaware of.
Interesting. Okay.
Never saw that before.
Sure.
Now, the thing about mold is I won't tell you it's mold. I will tell you that, hey, it looks like mold. Mm-hmm. I think you might want to...
So you got to get a mold person in there to test it and all
get
that
a microbiologist in there. I'm not a microbiologist. I can only tell you, it looks like mold.
It's black and stinky.
And it could be mold.
Sure.
But what type of mold it is, or even if it is mold, that'd be a microbiologist looking at it and identifying it, and then he's able to tell you, or she is able to tell you, what are the dangers of this type of mold and what it's doing.
Gotcha.
Because there's... From what I understand, there's all kinds of different mold out there, and not all of them is harmful to you, but some of them are.
I know. We answer the phone for a couple places like that, and so there's all kinds. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
And it's a common enough thing that there's businesses on there that do that.
All right, and now we're in the day and age where when you see mold, then people kind of freak out a little bit more than what they need to sometimes about mold.
Okay.
Because not all mold is bad.
Sure.
It is a green product after all. It's living in nature.
Just like formaldehyde.
Yeah, it's living in nature, and it's out there, but you just don't want it growing in certain areas. And then if you enclose it in an environment, now you got a air quality issue.
Sure.
That's happening. So, but yeah, I've done inspections before where it's, I've noticed the mold spots where they haven't.
All right.
There's a couple of them I'm thinking of that actually turned into pretty big cleanups.
Sure. Interesting. So I want to ask you a few questions before we run out of time here.
Okay.
So you worked for other companies doing this as well, right?
Yes.
Doing remediation and clean up, all that jazz. What do you like about owning your own business doing this?
Well, the thing about owning my own business, it's twofold. I like owning my own business because I can go and do where I want, what I want.
Mm-hmm.
On the same hand, owning my own business, I got to go and do what I said I'm going to go do.
Right.
So doing those inspections, for instance, we talked about this last week on Saturday. The phone rang, early in the morning.
Sure.
And it's not what I had planned for my Saturday.
All right.
So you got to go do those things.
Sure.
So you go do what you have to do, but on the same hand, there's just some days, hey, it's a little bit different here. I'm going to go do something fun. So that's the big part about owning your own. Is just the other thing for me is I'm a control freak.
Okay.
So I like things my way.
Self-acknowledged. All right.
I like things my way because I think it's the way that, especially for doing the cleanup and whatnot.
Sure.
There's just certain things that can be organized, especially if we're talking about a sewage cleanup. The
Sure.
last thing you want to do is, as you're cleaning it up, spread it further.
Fair. Okay.
So let's do this my way. So we're working this in here so we're not spreading the sewage
All right.
further.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that direction comes from even talking to the homeowners going, hey, don't keep walking through this stuff.
Sure.
You're creating more to clean up than
Right.
what you're trying to do. So let's get in here and, do this step first.
What have you had to learn the hard way? Was it employees, or was it buying the right equipment, or dealing with customers?
I think starting up is knowing what you need. You brought this up before when we were talking about it, is knowing what equipment you need, if you need that type of stuff.
Sure.
If you're a business, what equipment do I need, and then what people do I need to start with using that equipment.
Sure.
And having that right balance.
Sure.
So that, the worst thing you want to do is you go spend a lot of money on equipment. You got this great fancy equipment, but I don't have anybody that can operate it.
Oh, minor detail. Okay.
Okay. And vice versa. Oh, I got all these people, but we only have this, this minor equipment. It barely does anything versus this other piece of equipment that I could have.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's kind of like, do I need the rotor tiller, or do I need the farm tractor to plow my field?
Right.
If you got a bunch of people and you have just the rotor tiller,
right,
but you really need the farm equipment.
It's the right tool for the job.
That was the challenge off the beginning, is balancing those two things out with, how much people do I need versus how much equipment do I need?
Gotcha.
And vice versa. I think, to me, that's when you're first starting a business, it's almost like the hardest thing to figure out.
Oh, that's fair.
Because let's say you get a lot of people, but then you don't have a lot of sales. How do I pay those people? They did some work for me, but then I didn't have the sales to provide. You
got to have some capital in the bank to be able to fund
right. So then
non-rainy days, right?
Right. So then you need the capital in the bank, or you need to take out more loans, or you need to do,
sure.
Which that's not how this is supposed to work. It's supposed to work.
Not in an ideal world.
How it's supposed to work is that we sell this product, and we all made we all made some money off of the product that we sold, because we all had a hand into to doing it. We all are providing, for our families that way. So when that balance gets off like that,
right,
that can be hard. So figuring that out.
Right.
Like I said, I've been doing this now for over 3 years now. I'm still trying to figure that out.
You let me know when you get it done, because I'm in the process as well. It's all good. This has been Authentic Business Adventures, the business program that brings you the struggles, stories, and triumphant successes of business owners across the land, including stinky water places, right?
Oh, jeez.
Coming to you from the Sun Prairie Community Studios, underwritten by Bank of Sun Prairie. I am James Kademan, business coach at Draw In Customers Business Coaching and author of the Bold Business book, available on Amazon. We'd like to thank you, our wonderful listeners, and our guest, Gerry Pfeiffer of Hydra Pro Drying Systems. Gerry, you got a website?
I do have a website. It's hydroprodrying.com.
Awesome. How about a phone number?
You can always reach me at 608-622-9694.
You got it, man. So if anybody's got their water problems, right?
Here's the other thing I'll mention about that real quick.
Sure.
Is that it doesn't have to be Monday to Friday, 8 to 5 to get a hold of me.
No, it's 24/7, 365. People got problems all day.
We don't close.
That's the name of the game. Find us airing on 103.5 Wednesdays at 6 p.m. and Sundays at 2 p.m., as well as at sunprairiemediacenter.com. We can also be found morning, noon, and night at the podcast link on drawincustomers.com. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. I want you to stay awesome. Enjoy your business.